problems and working together with residents to figure out how we solve them. And we're gonna give you a little context for tonight's conversation. But before we do that, I wanna do a quick show of hands. Raise your hand if you subscribe to the Chronicle in any form, paper, digital, any form. Wow, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. If you didn't raise your hand,
leave.
We still love you. You don't have to leave. We still love you. Go to sfchronicle.com/events and subscribe. We've got some great deals right now, so take advantage of those. And we're gonna have an amazing panel coming up in just a little bit, hosted by Laura Wennis, the host of the Fixing Our City podcast. Woo! Woo! If you do not already listen to the podcast, I think you would like it because you're here. So please take a second later in the evening, get out your phone, find your podcast app, and subscribe and listen to conversations about fixing our city. And with that, we're gonna get started. So Emilio and Jonathan, please join me up here.
Emilio just went to grab some water. Hang on one second.
Here he is, making an entrance.
We're extremely organized here.
Thanks for joining us.
Good water.
So we're going to start our panel in a few minutes, but I just wanted to get started with telling you guys a little bit about what SF Next is and sort of the initiative behind tonight's conversation. So I'm going to start with Jonathan, our director of SF Next. Jonathan, what is it? What is SF Next?
Well, first of all, thank you all for coming. This is, wow, what a fantastic turnout. So we've been engaged in a project for over a year now where what we're trying to do is convene and facilitate community engagement and conversation around some of the most significant challenges that the city faces. We've had a lot of meetings, both on the record and off the record, with various community groups, residents, citizens of all kinds. We did a massive poll last summer, which you may remember, that really sort of put in relief the things that all of you and your fellow residents of the city feel are the most pressing issues. And so we're pushing forward to get as many ideas, as many people engaged in this conversation. Look, we've been dealing with some of these things for a long time, and we haven't made as much progress as I think anyone thinks we need to. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and we're gonna do some of that later on this evening. This is gonna be a conversation. We're having a panel with some incredible guests who are gonna speak to you, but we're gonna open it up to everyone here. So if you have questions, if you have ideas, there's gonna be a part of tonight and we wanna hear from you. Emilio.
Yes. Yes.
We've been doing SF Next for a year now and having these conversations looking at San Francisco, its problems, and what stands in the way of solving them. What have you learned in the last year? What have you taken away from that?
Well, I think the big takeaway is how can such a beautiful, great place to live with so many innovative, smart people have these troubles. I think that really is, I'm totally an outsider. I've only been here for about 2.5 years. I actually have never lived in San Francisco outside of the pandemic. Pretty scary. And it is remarkable that such a beautiful place with one of the most innovative places in the world can be struggling with problems for 3 decades. And when I got here, I met a lot of reporters who have been doing the same stories for a very long time. Kevin Fagan has been covering homelessness for the Chronicle for a couple of decades. And I asked him, has it gotten any better? Did the coverage make a difference? And he said, yeah, I think so. I think the coverage made a difference. And that made me think that maybe we need to look at things a little differently. So with John's help, we embarked not only on traditional coverage, but also on a way of convening people to see if we can come up with some different solutions than what's been presented so far.
Yeah, so you mentioned convening people, and that's been a huge part of SF Next for the past year, is convening these community conversations and getting people in a room, a little bit like tonight, to talk about San Francisco's problems. Jonathan, what have you taken away from those conversations?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're really trying to sort of push the envelope of what community journalism is all about, and it needs to be much more expansive than just writing stories, throwing them out there, seeing what sticks. I guess I've come away with a couple of things. One is, as Emilio sort of alluded to, there is this place here with not only incredible, innovative and entrepreneurial people, but also a very wealthy tax base, right? And yet, there's a remarkable lack of sort of big vision that I don't see. I don't know if you guys agree. I'd be interested in hearing that. But that's sort of a big takeaway for me, is that when you're dealing with the kinds of problems that we have here, you would want sort of big visionary leadership to try to pull you out of that. And so that's another reason why we want to engage more of the public, because you've got ideas too.
I'd love to hear about some of those ideas that have impacted both of you, and as you've been having these conversations, you've been in sort of a privileged position to get to hear from San Franciscans who are really engaged and really care about their city. What are some of the things that they've said that have stuck with you?
First of all, you have to respect the enormity of the challenge, right? So you have a couple of decades old problems in a city that is structurally built for homelessness to be in its downtown, which is very rare. Most of the services are right by the Chronicle building. And you know, so the Tenderloin is sort of the traditional spot, is very rare. But when you combine that with the pandemic, this massive revolution in how people work, the arrival of the opioid crisis in the form of fentanyl, and the sort of the mental health debate about how do you serve the mentally ill? Do you incarcerate? Do you force treatment? Do you leave them on their own? The biggest thing I've learned is that I truly believe that most of San Francisco's problems come from a good place. We don't throw people in jail if they act weird on the street. We don't have the mentally ill being assaulted in prisons. I think most of the people here want the best for the community, but getting there has been a challenge. And the other thing I'll say that has been remarkable for somebody who's outside the community, in all these meetings we've had, and it might change tonight, but in all these meetings we've had, nobody's ever stood up and said, we're paying too much goddamn taxes, you need to cut our taxes. It's the opposite. People have said, I'll pay more to fix these problems. And that is really unique to have a community that's that focused on solving some of these issues. It has to be unbelievably frustrating for you all to be going through this sort of thing, because I think everybody's heart's in the right place.
The other interesting thing that we've heard a lot is how sometimes the source of the problem in some people's minds is the solution to the problem in other people's minds. It's very kind of odd, but a small example of this is, you know, the pandemic has spawned all these parklets, right? And most people, I think, walk around saying, well, this is cool, and it's sort of like Paris, and et cetera. And we were in one meeting with small business owners, and the guy who owns a chain of hardware stores said, these are retail killers. People can't park, they can't get to our stores as easily, et cetera. So not even something like that, right, is simple in sound. There's so much polarization, there's so much disagreement amongst a city that's entirely blue, right? So it's such a unique place, which is both the wonder of it and I think also now pulling it back.
And we're embarking on year 2 of this initiative. We've spent a year talking to people, writing stories, looking at San Francisco's problems and why we continually fail to solve them. What have you learned about problem solving on a city level? What have you taken away from that and from that coverage? What's changed?
So I think there's some fundamental questions about the place that we're still sort of noodling on, which is the governmental structure correct? Is the mayor and the supervisor system, is that built to actually work? And if you talk to the mayor, she'll tell you the problem is the supervisors. If you talk to the supervisors, they'll tell you it's the mayor's fault. And so what you have is a bunch of people talking past each other, even though there's fundamental agreement on most issues, on the big issues. And so solving anything is really tricky.
This town is so perfect for the perfect being the enemy of the good. I've never seen a place that is so much like that as here. And I've been in and out of the Bay Area for decades, but the city of San Francisco seems to be extremely professional at that problem.
Dubious honor.
One of the things John always talks about that is very unique to this place is there is no pain from saying no to something here. There's pain to saying yes. That's backwards. In most other places, if you are the person stopping things, you're the bad person. Here, a lot of the stopping things is done with the backing of a lot of powerful people, and so the yes is what is risky to people here.
And John, as we kind of embark on year 2 of this project, what do you hope SF Next achieves for the city and its residents? I don't think anyone expects the Chronicle to solve all of the city's and grade problems. Hopefully not single-handedly. What do you hope we achieve?
Yeah, I mean, there's not going to be a V8 moment where the city hall people say, "Oh, you guys, you just gave us all the answers. Thank you very much." Not going to happen. I do think, and I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret for the first time. Actually, we're talking about where we're headed in year 2, and one of the things we're thinking about. And if there are people in here with the kind of subject matter expertise that might be helpful, I'd really like to hear from you afterwards. But we're talking about actually facilitating a process whereby a blueprint for the city in 2030 is created. It appears to us that if you can do that as a sort of stalking horse for real debate and real involvement, that would be, I think, a tremendous win for both the city and for all of its residents, all the people who come to visit here. Such a special place, and we just want it to be great.
And Emilio, before we turn these chairs and these microphones over to our panelists, I want to ask you, maybe some people saw it. We had a big story that published today about doom loops, and if San Francisco is headed for a doom loop and what that might entail. It was a bit grim, I would say. Why was that such an important story for the Chronicle to cover, and what do you see as the role of conversations like the one we're going to have tonight in avoiding that eventuality?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things we've done. We spent a lot of time talking about homelessness and about crime and about some of these other issues, but there's a bomb that's coming down, and it hasn't even landed yet. And basically 80% of the city's GDP depends on people coming back to the office. People are not coming back to the office 5 days a week. And so with the loss of that revenue, you're going to have Muni and BART imperiled. You're going to have small businesses that can't stay open. Can you run a sandwich shop 3 days a week? Can this place operate if it only had people coming 3 days a week? You're going to have city services cut back. You might have tax increases. It's like this snowball that is going to hit the city. And I'm not sure we've found, one of the reasons we've pivoted a little bit to thinking about 2030 is we're not sure people in the city are actually going to do anything about it. There is this thinking that here's how you get out of the doom loop. You let capitalism take over. So here's how capitalism works. Commercial real estate rents continue to drop, and they 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 keep dropping. Commercial real estate rents have not started to drop yet in San Francisco, by the way. We're talking years. They drop, they drop, they drop. Owners start losing buildings. The banks take them over. You've got mass bankruptcy. The banks come in, own the buildings, and they're like, you know what, I just want anything, any revenue I can get. So they put out really cheap rents. So businesses that are in Silicon Valley or in Daly City or somewhere decide, no, it's really cheap to go downtown. And so all these businesses take up all these empty buildings. That's how capitalism works, right? Low rents bring people back. If you bring these new businesses back, well, then workers will follow. And then all the offices will be filled and everything will be fine. This is the plan for some people. And we look at this and it's like, that's 10 years. And when you hit bottom, I mean, we use this parallel, and it's a rough parallel, but are you Detroit when that happens? Is downtown completely hollowed out for this to happen? We've written a lot about conversion of real estate to housing. A lot of people don't think that's going to work. Can't happen fast enough. The building owners won't give up. won't give up the buildings to do it because they're waiting, right? You have this other massive problem, which is a lot of tech companies have these really long leases, so there's no incentive for building owners to lower rents. So if they don't lower rents and the rents stay high, the buildings stay empty, the revenue doesn't come in. And you've already seen Mayor Breed announce one budget shortfall. She's going to announce something tomorrow night, and when politicians announce stuff on Friday night, be very, very scared. Be very scared of any news that comes out on Friday night. So we'll see what that brings, right? Another budget revision. So there is this doom loop that could really do huge damage to the city, and I think it's important that we get it out there and start talking about it now, so we can begin thinking about some potential solutions.
And one other just important factor here is it's not just tech. The actual biggest out-migration during the pandemic has been low and middle income workers who were, keeping their jobs, but often commuting from outside or barely being able to scrape by the rent here in the city. Without a very different equation with affordable housing, those people are gone. And a lot of restaurants now are still closing, not because of the pandemic, but because they can't hire enough people to actually run their businesses. So this is a multi-layered problem, and we've got to just start thinking about creative solutions.
And we need to go back to the fact that San Francisco is unique in this problem because in the heyday of tech, most of the development was offices. Unlike other cities that had a good mix, San Francisco did not build a mix because there was such demand for offices. So everything that got built was an office. So I'm gonna do a quick poll. How many of you who used to work 5 days in a week in an office are looking forward to going back to 5 days a week in an office?
5 of you.
And so this is the doom loop. If the rest of you don't go back, the city collapses.
It's just on you. It's all your fault.
And I say this as an employer of 175 people who knows that my people aren't coming back.
We're not back 5 days a week. And I'm gonna cut you guys off there. Thank you so much for joining me.
Coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
And without further ado, I'm gonna hand this mic over to Laura for a conversation about how we save downtown. Thank you so much.
I'm actually going to take this mic, and I would like to invite my panelists, please, to come join me. We're giving downtown a great rap, the way that we're talking about it. Doom loops, everything's collapsing. Actually, so I know that we in media have not set a particularly uplifting tone, but I recently talked with an economist, and I asked him for his assessment of downtown, and he said, the vibes are not great. But it's, it is about more than vibes, as Emilio and John just laid out. The city's economy is powered by downtown, and a big share of our tax revenues are generated by downtown. And you get into the situation, or you might get into the situation, where if cities don't have the people in offices anymore, office real estate values drop. That actually has a lot of repercussions because of those tax revenues, which fund services. If you can't fund services as a city, then you might lose more people, and then we're back at the beginning of the doom loop, and things go very poorly for us. Which sounds very dire, but we have a panel here of